I'm looking forward to working with you in this next session called Extracting Price Feedback. And what we're going to do is exactly that, extract price feedback. There's a difference between asking for feedback on what a buyer thinks about a property versus extracting that feedback. My intention in this session is to push you out of your comfort zone. So when you're talking to a buyer, asking for feedback on a property they've just inspected, and they're resisting or don't want to give you much information, the step-by-step process to push and to dig deeper outside of your comfort zone and find price feedback and a potential buyer where you least expected. One of the most frustrating experiences that I have at auction is when the buyers and the neighbours, they're standing on the front lawn. Myself, the agent, and the vendors are standing inside the living room. The door's locked. We're having that private discussion around which bidders are here, which bidders are not here, and the reserve price. And the vendor, well, we thought they were going to set their reserve around $1 million, but they've now let us know that they're going to set it at $950 and they're potentially going to flex to $930 or even $920 if they really have to, depending on what transpires. And in these situations, I've seen it many times before, the agent's standing there thinking and sometimes saying, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, if only you told me that a few weeks ago, I would have kept talking to buyer X. I would have kept talking to buyer Y. Right now we've got one bidder, but if you told me this a few weeks ago, we could have had 3 or 4. Now let's break out of that scene that I just set for you. In that instance, do you think it's the vendor's fault that the agent didn't keep in touch with the buyers and get them to the auction? I don't. I believe it's the agent's fault. You're not Nostradamus. You've got no idea what price your vendors will shift to or what price the buyers will bid to in competition. So it's critical that you remove price altogether and act as if anything can happen, because anything can happen. Now, let's pull out the microscope on the Auction Campaign Masterclass signature system. What we're going to be working on in this session is the feedback, extracting feedback from buyers, both buyers we bring through pre-launch, those hot buyers in the Campaign Accelerator session, and also buyers that we bring through after the first open for inspection, buyers that have inspected the property at the first open and we call them back to get feedback from them, or we get that feedback at the open, wherever you see to beat's best opportunity. Now, what we're also going to cover is the auction invitation. So we've got feedback from a buyer, we pass that feedback on to the owner, then we call the buyer back and we invite them to the auction. And there could be a couple of rebuttals that we need to face in order to get them to commit to that auction. And we're going to roll through each one of those sequences. Now, what I call this is the extracting price feedback magic formula. Now, it's not necessarily magic, but it's so beautifully simple that I like to call it the magic formula. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have worked with many clients in my history of auctions, and I'm always really fascinated around the auction process of sale, what works and what doesn't work. There's a few clients that I've worked with who track their statistics inside their sales campaigns intricately. And what they know to be true, and I know to be true, and you'll know to be true if you track these statistics yourself. By the way, you probably don't even need to track them. It's pretty straightforward, but track them if you want to prove it to yourself. What I know to be true is this: the more price feedback that you extract from buyers, what that then leads to is more price adjustments from your clients, which then leads to, usually, not always, but much more often than not, decreased days on market. That then usually leads to higher prices. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I want to zoom in on this price adjustment component. You might be thinking, hang on a second, are we just going for price adjustments just so our clients can get their reserve down and we can just sell the property move on to the next listing and get our commission? Absolutely not. This is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here, it's critical for your clients to be at least prepared to adjust their price if they need to when a competitive market offer comes along that you know it's in their best interest to take. Now, if you haven't prepared your client to take that offer of, say, for example, $970,000 because you haven't given them feedback, well, if they take $930,000 in 5 weeks' time, a $40,000 loss, it's not your clients to blame for that loss. It's you, because you didn't embrace and follow this process. Let's move to the price intersection graph. This one is really important. Let's reflect back on what I said a few minutes ago in relation to that experience 5 minutes before the auction starts. And your vendors, you thought they were going to set their reserve at $1 million, but all of a sudden they adjust their reserve price. And you're like, if you told me that earlier, I would have kept talking to those other buyers. Now let's really break this down. This here represents our vendor's price. And on the right-hand side, this represents our buyer's price. Now what I'm going to do, just so I can paint this picture nice and clear for you, I'm just going to write some prices down this quadrant here. So 1,990,000, 980,000, 970,000, 960,000, and $950,000. Now, before I work through this, I just wanted to let you know something. Clearly, sometimes it's not in our client's best interest to adjust their price anyway. But I'm not here to talk to you about in Auction Campaign Masterclass what happens if we've got a flood of buyers who very quickly and readily pay at or above your owner's reserve price immediately from week one. Because in those instances, there's nothing for us to work through. There's nothing for us to coach. Here, we're just talking about when we encounter hurdles, when we encounter challenges. Because when we master those moments in time, that's when we master the process. So we've got 1 million through to $950,000. We've got the vendor's price on the left-hand side and the buyer's price on the right-hand side. Now, there are 3 different vendor prices that you need to be aware of. Number 1, it is the price that they tell you. Then there is the price that your vendors are actually thinking, which is much more often than not lower than the one that they tell you. Then you have the third price. You know, halfway through an auction, when you pause to consult your owners and you bring them the highest bid, and the husband and wife say to you, "Can you give us a couple of minutes? We need to talk about this." What they're actually saying is, "We haven't discussed this figure yet, so we're going to talk now to see if we're open to taking it." And then after a couple of minutes, they shift and they say yes. This is a price that they didn't even know yet. And it's the price they shift to on the day of sale. On the flip side, there's 3 buyer prices. Number 1, the price the buyer tells you. Number 2, the price the buyer is actually thinking, which is usually more than the one that they tell you. And number 3 is the price the buyer bids to in competition on auction day. And that's the one that they shift to as well. And you know when you're conducting an auction and bidders are bidding against each other and the underbidder needs to make a phone call or needs a few minutes to consult their partner or pull out their calculator to ascertain if they'd like to and could place another bid? They didn't even know that they were going to bid there. And so if the buyer doesn't even know what price they're going to bid to, and if the vendor has got no idea what price they're going to shift to, how on earth would you have any idea where those 2 prices are going to intersect? So stop pretending like you're Nostradamus.